Most people think mentally strong people are fearless. They imagine someone who never cries, never doubts themselves, never feels overwhelmed. Someone who always knows exactly what to do. But psychology paints a very different picture, because exceptional mental strength isn't the absence of fear. It's what happens after fear has already arrived. The strongest minds aren't born unbreakable. They're often built through experiences that forced them to adapt long before they ever wanted to. Many of them were misunderstood. People called them cold, independent, emotionless, or even difficult to understand. But what others mistake for emotional distance is often years of learning how to survive without falling apart. Psychology suggests that people with exceptional mental strength tend to share several hidden psychological patterns, not because they're better than everyone else, but because life quietly taught their minds to work differently. And one of those patterns might explain more about you than you expect. Mental strength is one of the most misunderstood qualities in psychology. People often confuse it with confidence, toughness, or pretending that nothing hurts. But true psychological resilience usually looks much quieter. It's the person who keeps going after repeated failure, the one who stays calm while everyone else panics, the one who carries enormous emotional weight without demanding recognition. That doesn't mean they never struggle. In many cases, they've simply learned something that most people never had to learn. Their minds became strong because life repeatedly tested them. Today, we'll explore 7 psychological patterns that are surprisingly common among people with exceptional mental strength. As we go through them, pay attention to which one feels most familiar. Because mental strength doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides inside ordinary behaviors that most people overlook. The first pattern is that they accept reality faster than most people. One of the biggest differences between mentally strong people and everyone else is how quickly they stop arguing with reality. Most people spend enormous energy wishing things were different. They replay conversations, blame circumstances, or wait for life to become fair again. Exceptionally mentally strong people feel disappointment too, but they rarely stay trapped there. Psychologists call this psychological acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It means recognizing that reality exists whether we like it or not. Once reality is accepted, energy can finally move toward action instead of resistance. This simple shift makes them appear unusually calm during a crisis, not because they don't care, but because they've learned that fighting reality only creates a second problem on top of the first. That's why they're often the people others rely on when everything starts falling apart. The second pattern is that they don't need constant validation. Many people build their confidence from approval, compliments, achievements, or social media. But people with exceptional mental strength often rely on something much quieter: internal validation. They still appreciate encouragement. They simply don't depend on it. Psychology suggests that people with a stable internal compass are less likely to let praise inflate them or criticism destroy them. This doesn't mean they ignore feedback. It means their identity isn't controlled by other people's opinions. That gives them remarkable emotional stability in situations where others constantly seek reassurance. Ironically, this quiet confidence is often mistaken for arrogance, when in reality, it's usually emotional independence. The third pattern is that they don't let emotions make their decisions. One of the biggest myths about mentally strong people is that they don't feel intense emotions. In reality, they often feel everything just as deeply as everyone else. The difference is what happens in the minutes that follow. When most people are overwhelmed by anger, fear, or disappointment, their first instinct is to react, to send the text, to quit the job, to argue, to prove a point. People with exceptional mental strength usually pause. Not because they don't care, but because they've learned that the first emotion is rarely the wisest one. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as emotional regulation. It doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending they're fine. It means creating enough space between feeling something and acting on it. That small pause can completely change the outcome of a conversation, a relationship, or even an entire life. Many people mistake this pause for emotional coldness. They assume mentally strong people don't care enough to react. But often the opposite is true. They care so much that they've learned not to let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. For many of them, this ability wasn't learned from books. It was learned through painful experience. Perhaps they once spoke in anger and lost someone they loved. Perhaps they made impulsive choices they regretted for years. Or maybe life simply taught them that panic rarely solves the problem that created it. Over time, their brain began to associate patience with safety. Instead of asking, "How do I make this feeling disappear?" their mind learned to ask, "What decision will still make sense tomorrow?" That single question quietly separates emotional maturity from emotional impulse. Of course, mentally strong people still make mistakes. They still lose their temper. They still have moments when emotions win. But unlike most people, they don't build their identity around those moments. They reflect, they adjust. And next time, they pause just a little longer. Because exceptional mental strength isn't about controlling every emotion. It's about refusing to let every emotion control you. The fourth pattern is that they stop taking everything personally. One of the quietest signs of exceptional mental strength is the ability to separate your worth from other people's behavior. Most of us naturally personalize what happens around us. A short reply feels like rejection. A canceled plan feels like disrespect. A criticism feels like proof that we're not good enough. Our brains are wired to search for meaning. And when information is missing, we often fill the gaps with stories about ourselves. They must be disappointed in me. I must have done something wrong. They probably don't like me anymore. But people with exceptional mental strength gradually learn a different habit. Instead of immediately asking, "What's wrong with me?" they're more likely to ask, "What else could explain this?" Psychology calls this cognitive flexibility, the ability to consider multiple explanations instead of becoming trapped inside one painful interpretation. That simple shift protects them from unnecessary emotional suffering. They understand something many people don't. Everyone is fighting battles that have nothing to do with you. Sometimes people will become distant because they're exhausted. Sometimes they cancel because life became overwhelming. Sometimes they're quiet because they're carrying problems they haven't shared with anyone. Not every silence is rejection. Not every disagreement is disrespect. And not every ending is a reflection of your value. This doesn't mean mentally strong people ignore betrayal or excuse unhealthy behavior. When someone repeatedly crosses their boundaries, they notice. When respect disappears, they don't pretend everything is fine, but they also refuse to let every difficult interaction become evidence that they're somehow unworthy. That distinction changes everything. Because once you stop interpreting every disappointment as a personal failure, your emotional energy becomes available for something far more important: growth, peace, and clarity. Ironically, this mindset often makes mentally strong people seem unusually calm in situations that send others into emotional spirals. It's not because life hurts them less. It's because they've learned that other people's actions are not always a mirror of their own value. One of the strongest minds you will ever meet isn't the one that never gets criticized. It's the one that no longer lets criticism define who they are. Exceptional mental strength begins the moment you stop measuring your worth by every opinion that passes through your life.